Good day and welcome back to the Laughing Horror Podcast. I am your host, as always, Kyle Laugh, and today we return to a semi professional podcast with all our features back intact. So, this does include news, releases, reviews, and, much, much more. So, before I get into anything, I must say something. Muhammad Ali had just passed away as of yesterday, so by the time this gets released, it'll probably be 2-3 days since. But the man was a legend. He was an icon. He was somebody for people to be able to follow throughout their lives. Watch his career, go back and watch his career. I've been training, in martial arts, fighting different aspects of the different combat sports for years, and every single person, whether it be male or female, that I've ran into who has been training at one point or another, Muhammad Ali was an inspiration to them. He was somebody to look up to. Whether it be his determination, his will, his attitude, the way he could get into an opponent's head, or just the way he moved around in the ring. Like, he was definitely somebody who inspired, many, many, many people, and he will be missed. So, our condolences go out to his family, and Mr. Ali, you rest in peace. Thanks for everything that you've done over the years for us. So, next to that, a bit of good news for you if you'd like. I do have a special announcement for you guys, which you're going to have to wait till the end of the show to listen to. But, definitely, I promise you, stick along or stick with it and get to the end of the podcast. Even fast forward if you need to listen to it. I guarantee you'll enjoy it. And yeah, so other than that, let's get on to the show and hop into some news. So John Carpenter is returning to the Halloween franchise as an executive producer, and it's also rumored that he will be scoring the film as well. Also rumored to be writing and directing the film is Mike Flanagan, who was hot off the heels of his last project entitled Hush, which has been very well received upon its Netflix release. Everybody I've spoken to in regards to the film absolutely loved it. I have not heard one person say one bad thing about it as of yet. So if you haven't seen it yet, head up Netflix. It's on there. You'll definitely enjoy it. And for those of you unaware of this Halloween installment, it's actually to be a direct sequel to the original franchise and not a remake or a continuation of the Rob Zombie film, which itself spawned its own sequel. So definitely interested in seeing what's going to happen with this, how they're going to work it out. Considering that Carpenter's on board, more than likely will be something good going on with it. And speaking of Mr. Carpenter, Scream Factory has actually announced that they're going to be releasing a 2-disc Blu-ray collection. Two-disc Blu-ray collector's edition of none other than the 1982 horror classic The Thing, which is actually said to be loaded with, tons of extras, as Scream Factory / Shout Factory always does. Nothing specific has been announced as of yet, though, but the release will be due out in September of this year, so I'm absolutely looking forward to checking that out, and I'm going to try to pick myself up a copy if I've got the funds to do so. So next up, Brad Fuller of Platinum Dunes announced this week that the new script for the newest Friday the 13th series reboot has been delivered, and the studios are moving forward with it. Sorry. Fuller went on to state that the story actually has great characters and that they're going back to the start with a different retelling of the origin, but did ensure the fans that Jason and his mother Pamela will be central to the story. A few days following this announcement, Fuller came back out to say that they're actually looking to explore the history of Jason's father, and I believe his name is Elias. He's been alluded to a few times in the series and actually seen in comic book form at one point in time or another. So that'll actually be an awesome way to retell the story, something that we definitely have not seen before as of yet. In a new featurette for The Conjuring 2, which was posted on YouTube by Fandango, James Wan went on to say that he would like to bring respect back to the studio horror films and brought up The Exorcist as an example. this one small statement seemed to have made a lot of fans angry. Um, a lot of the fans started stating that the issues with the box office horror is predictability, lack of true horror, like just giving them jump scares. Some even went as far as to claim that Juan is one of the problems with these types of films and is just looking for a quick buck. You know, um, all I gotta say is you can't say that about James Wan. All of his horror movies have been excellent. Like Conjuring was a great film. Yeah, there's a couple of jump scares in there, but it was psychological. If you do not have the intelligence to take in a psychological thriller slash horror, you're obviously not gonna like it. I'm sorry. If you're just there to look for a straight up bloodbath, which I love watching myself. So don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna criticize that subgenre, but it's there's different types of subgenres, and if you don't like a certain one, there's not really much else you can do except for wait for one of the ones that you do enjoy to come into the theater if that ever happens. Um, I believe this just stems from the current generation that's coming up, the generation following mine, I should say. Um, always a complaint from them instead of a way to resolve the issue. It seems like the bleeding hearts, I believe they call them, but like I said, there are so many genres to horror that does not matter what the story is or who's in it or who the film's directed by. It's gonna bother somebody, and 1,000 of their friends, and they'll all feel the same way. And then you got another group, another guy with 1,000 of his friends that think it's a great film. So James Wan, I feel, is sincere in what he wants to do, and he'll probably show it once again with the Conjuring 2 once it's released. So yeah, I know I sounded jumbled up there. It's just it honestly upsets me that I was reading some of the comments, which I shouldn't do because it just riles me up every time. But some of the comments in the forum sections, and just some of the stuff they're saying about the director or some of the directors out there nowadays, it just drove me nuts. So I do apologize about that. But we'll move on. We'll move on. So horror icon Robert Englund, known best for his portrayal as Freddy Krueger it was at the Belfast Comic Con this past month, and was quoted as saying that he was interested in making a comeback to the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Of course, it was in the form of a fun cameo, something that the fans could get a kick out of and appreciate. He does not want to don the makeup anymore. It's just too much of a hassle. The man's of 70 years old, give or take. Time to give him a break now. I'd definitely be behind him doing a cameo. But he also went on to say that he was not a fan of the 2012 remake of the film, and claiming, and I quote, "The problem with the remake was that it came out too soon. We had just released the digitally remastered Blu-ray box set of all 8 films, and then they brought out the remake almost straight after." And that quote was originally from SquareEyed.tv, who picked up on the story originally. But yeah, Mr. England, you're not the only one. I don't know. I think I know very few people who actually enjoyed that film, and there were basically people who've never seen the original. So yeah, just yeah. But if they do actually plan on doing a remake, like that's one of the things they wanted to do a remake, or they want to do a remake of the Friday the 13th franchise, which I felt they didn't need to with the last one that they made. I understand, studios, the property changed hands for to different studios over the course of the last couple of years. So of course the new studio who owns it, they want to start their own franchise with it. I get it. Nightmare on Elm Street, I believe it has not moved from New Line at all. At this point in time, the last one is, done and forgotten. Nobody cares about it. Go ahead and make another one. Definitely go ahead and make another one. Wash that poor taste out of our mouths, and please God, just use practical effects and not that CG crap that she did. The if you've seen it, the wall scene where Freddy comes out of the wall in the remake, not the original. The one in the original just looked phenomenal, but in the remake, his face is coming through the wall, and then all of a sudden, it just starts swishing around and then pops back in. That killed the movie for me immediately. So, yeah. Anyways, once again, you want to release or re-release a reboot, a remake, whatever, go ahead. It's all fine by me, and I'm sure a lot of people will agree with you, especially if Robert Englund wants to even just cameo in it. So, yeah, it's a great week when you have all the classic players involved in the news, like the big three, as I like to call them. So you definitely can't go wrong with Freddy, Jason, and Michael. So. And last but not least, the new Pennywise has been announced. So actor Bill Skarsgård of Hemlock Grove has been chosen to portray everybody's favorite killer clown. So originally it was portrayed by Tim Curry, for those of you who don't know, which if you don't know, there's a problem there because he was just excellent as Pennywise. Anyways, I personally feel like nobody can replace Tim Curry as Pennywise, but I'm definitely still interested in seeing how the film plays out when it comes to theaters this year or next year, and how this new actor will be able to portray it. I believe, let's see here, the release is going to be September 8th, 2017, so we can definitely check it out then. So, and just, just a last second note here, just checking my notes. I don't know if any of you have heard about this, but a 19-year-old who, will remain nameless, as, he does not need any more fame for what he did. He's been charged with murdering 3 people, plus another handful of charges on top of it. Basically, the guy was claiming that he was purging, like the movie The Purge. So it was a 4-day purge. He went out, murdered people, robbed people, did all sorts of things. Just absolutely insane. And the media is now blaming the horror film and the horror community, as opposed to blaming the guy of having, a possible mental instability or anything of that nature. So when it comes to things like this, blaming movies, video games, whatever. I was raised with horror films. When I was very young, I did not want anything to do with them because they scared the hell out of me. But I was still raised with them. I didn't turn out to be a psycho killer. I just turned out to be a fan of the genre. I was also raised with games like Doom and Duke Nukem 3D. Guess what? Even the original Duke Nukems, like when he's out in space and stuff. I didn't go out. I never went out and grabbed a gun and started shooting people. That doesn't make any sense to me that, you're going to blame video games and, blame all this stuff on different, like movies, media, things like that. But, anyways, yeah. So we'll carry on. Point is, I'm not a fan of the media just going ahead and blaming these things when there may be an actual issue with the person itself. So, but anyways, yeah. So we'll move on. As a small special today, I do have a couple of extra reviews on top of my horror monster mashup reviews. So on top of the Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Invisible Man reviews, I have a mini review of Preacher and a mini review of Outcast, both comic book properties that have been released as television shows in the last week. So, yeah, we'll jump right into that. We will start with Preacher. So as the synopsis goes, for Preacher, Jesse Custer is a conflicted preacher in a small town in Texas, who is inhabited by a mysterious entity that allows him to develop highly unconventional power. With the help of his ex-girlfriend Tulip and an Irish vampire named Cassidy, they embark on a journey to literally find God. This is based on the comic book franchise of the same name, which was created by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon, and brought to television by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. It stars Dominic Cooper, Ruth Negga, and Joseph Gilgan. I hope I said that correctly. And the synopsis was from comicbookmovie.com. My thoughts on Preacher, it was very enjoyable. AMC was able to kind of compete with The Walking Dead for gore in the show. Some practical effects, some not so practical. Bit of use of CGI, but for the most part, it was a good story compared to the comic book. There is a big difference, but considering that the comic was made in, I believe 92 or 93, there's going to have some changes be done to it in order to, keep it up to date with this current generation. So, otherwise, like I said, I really did enjoy it. Obviously, we don't like doing spoilers here, but if you get to check it out, definitely do so. It is very good. I believe that they'll be able to keep the series going strong as long as they keep taking from the comic book and adding some new things in there just to keep everybody on their toes, just like they've done with The Walking Dead. Next up was Outcast. So the synopsis for Outcast is another comic book adaptation from The Walking Dead creator Robert Kirkman. Outcast follows Kyle Barnes, a young man plagued by demonic possession all his life. Now with the help of Reverend Anderson, a preacher with personal demons of his own, Kyle embarks on a journey to find answers and regain the normal life he lost. But what Kyle discovers could change his fate and the fate of the world forever. And that synopsis was from ScreenRant.com. Like I said previously, I was actually more excited to see the Outcast television series as compared to the Preacher series. More so because Outcast I've been following since day one. I've got all the comics thus far. And it's Kirkman. Like, you can't go wrong with Robert Kirkman. So my thoughts on the show itself, a lot of it is directly from the comic book, which I do appreciate. Being a fan of the comic book, I pick up on all these key scenes that are happening. Very, like, the acting's great. The storyline has been great so far. They're really going with a slow burn. They're explaining everything around the main story, just like the comic did. The comic just kind of went in and just started, feeding you all the stuff that you're just like, okay, well, I'm not sure what's going on here, but hopefully they explain to me as we go, which they do. So again, Outcast, so far so good. I actually did prefer it over Preacher, which a lot of people have said otherwise to me, but Outcast did not premiere until yesterday, sorry. And yeah, so another one, definitely check it out if you're a comic book fan or just a Robert Kirkman fan. In all in all, he seems to have a way with horror themed comics and shows and things like that. So definitely something to look out for if you get a chance to. It is on Cinemax, however, which I know a lot of people do not get, but if you do, take a look at it. I'm sure there is going to be a way for you to find it via a streaming service or something sooner than later. So, again, definitely check that out. As for releases this week, on DVD and Blu-ray, June 7th, we have The Abandoned, starring Jason Patric, The Other Side of the Door, starring Sarah Wayne Callis and Jeremy Sisto, Dread Central presents Monsterland, which is an anthology film, The Funhouse Massacre, starring Robert Englund. In theaters on June 10th, The Conjuring 2, starring Verma Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. And also on June 10th, but on video on demand, the movie Cell is being released, which is co-written by Stephen King, based on the novel of the same name written by him, and it is starring Samuel L. Jackson and John Cusack. So that's all that we have for releases this week. So before we get into the meat of our reviews, I would like to shout out to the Daily Horoscope, who have an excellent website. It's loaded with original content and a bunch of giveaways, so definitely check them out. You can find them on Twitter at horror_scope666 or on their website, horoscopeweb.wordpress.com. Definitely check them out. So now we'll move into Dracula. So as I've been doing with all my other reviews for the Universal monster movies, I've been skipping the spoiler-free part, basically because the films are from the 1920s and 30s. Most people aren't going to watch them, and seriously, now this day and age, how many people are actually going to watch a black and white movie over some of the stuff that is available on Netflix, right? Odds are very few people, but if you are interested in checking those out, please do stop this podcast. Go ahead and check them out and continue afterwards. If not, go ahead and listen on through. So let's start once again with Dracula from 1931. After being warned by the townsfolk of danger, Renfield heads up to Castle Transylvania, where he is met by Count Dracula. Following a short business conversation between the two, Dracula gets Renfield to faint and feeds on him. Upon waking up, Renfield has turned crazy and has become Dracula's personal slave, ensuring Dracula makes it to London safely. Once the ship arrives, Renfield is the only survivor and brought in by authorities to the sanitarium. This is followed up with the whereabouts of Dracula, as he was found at the London theatre where he meets his next meal, stalks her, then completes the job with her passing away the next day. Meanwhile, Renfield, having been treated by Professor Van Helsing, is discovered to be controlled by a vampire. One Van Helsing is yet discovered, but quickly puts two and two together once meeting Dracula and notices he does not have a reflection in mirrors. As a result to an attack by Dracula, Van Helsing has had enough and claims that he will destroy him. Dracula tries to follow this up with hypnosis on Van Helsing, but it proves to be futile. Van Helsing, about to be attacked by a lunging Dracula, reveals a crucifix which affects Dracula, who then retreats. Soon after, yet another murder and kidnapping, Van Helsing and a man named Hector, which is probably wrong, hunt down and kill Dracula with a stake through the heart, all the meanwhile rescuing the kidnapped girl. My thoughts on Dracula of 1931 basically is that it was actually very slow and very boring. In comparison to all the other films, even the silent films that I've watched, they didn't have that effect where I was hooked into watching it. The scenes with Dracula were excellent. I loved it. But there was nothing that kept me wanting to watch it. It was completely boring. There Had I read the book originally, I may have had a different opinion and could have probably pieced a couple of things that they didn't put in between. That is one thing I have never done. Unlike for Frankenstein, which I have read that book, and let me tell you, it's a good one if you ever have time to read it. But anyways, if you get a chance to watch this, I definitely say go ahead and take a look at it for all the iconic parts. Otherwise, it's a bore fest. Not really much else I could say about that. So on next, we will move to Frankenstein, which again, I have read the book, and I have now seen the original film. Again from 1931, Frankenstein. Dr. Frankenstein, a man of science, along with his assistant Igor, began collecting various corpses. Seeing that the brains of his findings were all damaged and would be rendered useless, this prompts Igor to steal a brain from a medical school, but ends up with one which is marked as abnormal. Back in Dr. Frankenstein's homeland, his fiancée is searching for him, fearing for his life thanks to a series of letters that he had sent to her. Due to this, his fiancée enlists the aid of a professor to locate the doctor. Returning to Dr. Frankenstein's lab, We are shown that he has put together the corpses in order to create a new being. Before he can complete his experiment, he is disrupted by visitors who turn out to be his fiancée and her associates, whom he tries to turn away. His requests are ignored. He then decides to take them into his lab to prove to them that he is in fact sane, and attempts to do so by bringing the body to life. We are soon introduced to the monster and quickly learn of his aggressive nature, specifically when threatened by fire. Due to this, Dr. Frankenstein decides he must lock the monster away, but the effort was futile, and the doctor was required to drug his monster and ordered to keep him at bay. This once again was fruitless, as the monster awoke, killed the professor, and made his escape. Following up with the doctor, he is getting ready for his wedding back at his family home, but soon learns that the monster is approaching the village. Making a pit stop along the way to play with a little girl whom he proceeds to drown when throwing her into the water, while believing was for fun, the monster continues on his way. The news of the professor's murder quickly makes its way back to the doctor, but the monster followed suit quickly after. He found his way into the house and attacked the doctor's fiancée, Elizabeth. Moments later, the father of the young girl, whom the monster had drowned, was walking through the town, his daughter's body in his arms. As he progressed through the streets, a crowd began to gather. After announcing what happened, the group separated into 3 mobs and hunted the monster down. The doctor, being the first to find him alone, tries to end what he began and is knocked unconscious and brought into the old windmill. After numerous attempts to make an escape, the doctor is thrown from the top of the building, and the villagers start check on him and take him back to the city, while the remainder of the mob torch the windmill in order to destroy the monster locked inside. This one was much better than Dracula. Frankenstein's monster, excellently portrayed by, I believe, Boris Karloff. The way that the story progressed, it seemed like every piece of dialogue was, it made sense for the flow of the movie. Like everything that was being given to the audience at the time was used properly to explain the story. I did not find that to be happening in Dracula at all. I found that there was a lot of pieces that did not need to be there in it, but again, more than likely it was just for the expansion of the story. But this one I would definitely suggest to anybody who is or is not a fan of the black and white movies. Definitely, probably the most iconic one that I've dealt with so far. I did really enjoy this one, and I will watch it again in the future. The mannerisms by Boris Karloff were just amazing. He really portrayed an excellent monster. So once again, go ahead and check out Frankenstein if you get a chance to. And up next, we will give you the review for The Invisible Man. Now, this one was from a few years later, actually 1933. So we shall begin. From the dead of winter, a mysterious man enters a bar and demands a room. Once settled in, and his food's been delivered to him, the man starts to remove his outerwear, but is soon disturbed once again by the barmaid. He quickly covers his exposed face and sends her off. Once he ensures she is gone, he reveals that he is hiding nothing at all. The man is invisible. A few weeks have passed, and the motel owners are getting aggravated at the man, as he has yet to make any sort of payment towards his stay. After pleading with the owner, the man becomes enraged and attacks the motel owner, promptly dragging him out of the room and throwing him down the stairwell where his wife, the barmaid, comes to his aid and calls upon everyone at the bar for their help. The authorities are quickly brought in to rid of the unwanted guest, but as the officers and a group of men try to take him in, he reveals his true form to them. He completes the process of undress and becomes fully invisible, and finally attacks the patrons and makes an escape. We are then sent to the lab where it all began, and are explained what happened in order for the Invisible Man to become what he is today. The Invisible Man decides to invade one of the men's homes, demanding items in order to get dressed. He then proceeds to explain to him what happened and recruiting him to help find a cure to his issue. Shortly thereafter, he kills an officer, which sparks a massive manhunt in order to find the Invisible Man and bring him to justice. Feeling uneasy about their argument, the partner decides to call the police, which enrages the Invisible Man and prompts him to threaten the doctor with death by 10 p.m. the following evening. This encourages the police to use the doctor as bait. Although the officers had an excellent plan in place, the Invisible Man kept his word and killed the doctor at 10 p.m. due to following him around for the entire day. Thanks to an exhausting day, the Invisible Man finds a barn and decides to sleep in it, but is caught by the farmer who reports it to the police. No longer taking any chances, the officers surround the barn and set it on fire in order to draw him out. Once they do, he is tracked by the footprints in the snow and shot where he dies shortly after in hospital. The Invisible Man was very interesting. It was very easy to follow. The threat of an invisible person definitely is something that, if it were real, would be something to worry about. They played it very well. There was a couple of scenes where the Invisible Man decided to go on a rampage, so he's in the middle of the city, he's going to the bank, he's stealing money, he's throwing money around to people, singing songs left, right, and center. There's even a scene where he de-pantses somebody. I believe it was an officer, and puts his pants on. So all you see is a pair of pants running down the street with the lady running away from them, being scared for her life. I would suggest this one to anybody who is a horror fan who would like to get in on the history of horror. The dialogue was excellent. Everything was very well explained. It was very easy to keep up with. And there was very few parts that were unnecessary in it. So definitely check that out. So now for our special announcement. So next week, we will be having an interview with a certain director, Andy Palmer. And if you do not recognize the name, he is the director of the upcoming release of the Funhouse Massacre. Definitely something to check out. If you have not seen the trailer, I have it up on the Twitter page. You should definitely check it out. It looks awesome. It gave me the feeling that I got when I saw the original Purge trailer, thinking, this is a genius idea. I do not know why nobody has thought of this before. And I'm sure that Andy has been able to pull it off quite well, considering all the stuff that I've seen from the trailer and other little tidbits here and there. Plus, the ratings that it's gotten so far have been phenomenal. So I've not heard one bad thing about it as of yet, and I definitely cannot wait to watch it, and definitely cannot wait to speak to him in regards to it. So check for that out next week. And so in closing, just want to thank everybody once again for tuning into the Laughing Horror Podcast. If you would like to reach us on Twitter, our handle is at laughing_horror. You can check out our podcast. If you're already checking it out, you already know. If you're doing it for the first time, we are also on iTunes. Just type in Laughing Horror in the search bar under the podcast, and you should easily find us. So you can subscribe to us through there. If you use Podbean, which you definitely should, it's actually a pretty great app. I've been loving it since I've started using it for the recordings, as well as listening to some of my favorite podcasts on the side. You could follow me on there as well. Just look up Laughing Horror. So other than that, the email address, laughingHorrorPodcast@gmail.com. Please send us your comments, concerns, questions, that really anything that regards to the horror genre. If you want to tell me that, you liked a certain movie that has nothing to do with what we're doing, go for it. I'd like to hear feedback. If you have a suggestion for a good movie that I'd like to watch and put a review on here for, definitely let me know. Even if it's a horrible movie, if something that's so bad that you can't understand why it's so bad, that it's actually out there and it's it has to be known throughout the masses, let me know. I would love to see a stinker of a movie as well. I do need some pretty lazy, easygoing reviews to do once in a while as well. So until next time, thank you all again for tuning in to the Laughing Horror Podcast, and we will see you soon.